Thanks for joining us for another edition of This Week in Evansville. And this week we are drawing close to the mayoral election, so that's going to be our topic today. I'm Johnny Kincaid. Thanks for making the time to join us. Now, unbelievable that we could get a mayoral candidate to take time this close to the election. But we want to give everybody who's still kind of up in the air about the election an opportunity to hear from the candidates. So Natalie Rascher joins me. And first of all, thank you for making the time.
Absolutely. Thank you to all of the viewers and for you to have me on air.
This is really a hard time to get candidates, so I really appreciate you making the time. You've been on the campaign trail now for a while, and so how has that been for you?
It's been good. I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of residents that I had never met before. I've had the opportunity to really just dig into Evansville and find out more about some of the needs that our city has, and not just the needs through my eyes, but the needs through a lot of different individuals.
Does that kind of help to reshape how you see the role of mayor at all when you're doing that?
Well, I think anyone that steps up to run for mayor, or really any kind of elected office, you have a good sense of the role and your responsibilities. But whenever you're having those conversations one-on-one with people, sometimes I think we get a little too big picture at times, but whenever I'm knocking on a door and, the complaints are about the cracks in the sidewalks and the potholes in the road or trash not being picked up, it really brings it back down to a different focus. And that's where I think it's so important for, all elected officials to be out in the community and really be members and be engaged with everyone.
All right. Now, the last time that you and I talked, I asked a question about life balance.
Sure.
I got a little heat for that because they said you're sexist for that. But I was interviewing a male candidate for lieutenant governor the other day. I asked the exact same thing because
Sure.
you got young kids at home, and when they're young, there's always that. How's the family doing with?
Yeah, sure. Well, they're doing good. They're my cheerleaders behind the scenes, so to speak. But it's been a great opportunity for my kids as well, because they go door to door with us, and I think my son has my spiel down pat. He could do it for me, and then my daughter's usually too concerned. She wants to pet everyone's dogs or cats or whatever it may be. But really, it's neat to see them grow as young people throughout this process as well, and get a good understanding of some of the challenges that people see in Evansville.
What a great education for the kids!
Yeah,
right?
I like to think so.
That's terrific. And at the risk of having somebody decide to come after me again, I'm just my old guy advice, okay,
Sure.
is that you just never lose that priority, that Zach and those kids are the priority. That's no matter what happens with this election. It's family that really matters. So.
Oh, always. And, and to add on to that too, I had, I think it was a divine intervention today. I happened to jump on Facebook, and a good friend of mine who served in the military had made a post, and 4 years ago today was whenever she returned home from her deployment. She has 2 young boys that she had to leave behind, and the toll that takes on a mother or on a father
Sure.
Is a lot, and it helped kind of put things in perspective for me too, right? It's that idea of, yep, we've been working really hard. I haven't been able to, make all of the soccer games or, the Girl Scout meetings, but sometimes we have to sacrifice in order to do good for our whole community. And to know that my kids have understood that, and they're still behind me 100%. Good. To know that my husband is such a team player and has really been able to jump in, and and other family and friends that we rely on. So it's definitely service whenever you go into this kind of role, but it's well worth it.
Good. That's good. Any big lessons that you've learned from the campaign trail at this point?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I mean, like I said, it's really just been a good experience. I think getting to talk to other elected officials in different levels and really seeing how we can leverage resources Evansville is, the third largest city in the state, and it is the largest Republican-held city with that mayor seat. And to continue to receive that funding that we get from the state, from all of our conservative individuals that serve, in other counties, and it's really important. And I think that it's been very interesting to learn more about how that works and how we can lean on one another and help really more than just Evansville, but the region.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about vision.
Okay.
All right. I get slammed sometimes because of the fact that I sometimes don't hear much vision casting coming from elected officials. It's kind of like, well, okay, get me in and we'll see what, they're just not that firm picture there. So 5 years down the road,
Okay.
what will Evansville look like, or what will change in Evansville as a result of Natalie Rascher becoming mayor?
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, you're going to see a change within the Civic Center and how government works as a whole. We don't leverage technology as well as we could, but this is an opportunity where that next generation is going to step in and, really kind of push people in a different direction. We'll have several retirements over the next 5 years, and ensuring that we've got the skill set, the individuals that can fill those roles. And then again, with that idea of leveraging technology, I think our systems will just work much better together, and it will be less of a burden to work with city government.
Okay. One of the things that's bubbling up a little bit right now is what we do with the Riverfront, and the fact that we've got another opportunity where we're going to be seeking public input on that and everything.
Right.
How do you have a vision at all for what may happen with that Riverfront?
No, my vision is whatever our residents say they want to see, then that's what we will work toward. I've heard a lot of different ideas that have come out of some of those visioning sessions, and it all sounds great to me. We have to just look at, of course, cost and feasibility, and making sure that, some of the ideas that come out we can actually do. I did hear one about like a tunnel underneath the river, and I was like, well, I don't know, but who knows, right? We actually had someone that proposed damming up the river and turning it into a lake. And again, I don't think that's a possibility.
I don't think Corps of Engineers will go for that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's good to have those big ideas, and then we get to ask more questions. Well, why would we want to do that in the first place? And this individual started talking about recreation and having recreational opportunities there on the riverfront. So whatever comes out of this big master plan, I think that it will be exciting for our community. And again, it's not just Evansville alone. Newburgh is a part of this. Mount Vernon is a part of this as well.
Okay. That leads pretty much right into parks as well as being part of that vision for the future, but also for right now. There's been a lot of talk this year about the condition of our parks.
Yeah.
What do we do about that?
Right. Well, and it's not just a one-shot answer there, right? It's multifaceted. So we have $12 million in the parks budget. $6 million of that goes to the zoo. So really, we're only left with $6 million to take care of 6 pools, 3 golf courses, an ice rink, and then 46 parks. And then also, actually, Riverfront too, for Freedom's Monument. That's considered a park, and so there's a lot of just general maintenance and upkeep that has to happen with a very small budget. I would like to see our Parks Foundation and our Parks Board, and of course, the department itself, really start working together a little bit more, and then bringing in corporate partners so that we can have individuals that take pride in specific parks. Years ago, Kiwanis used to be a big contributor to Garvin Park, and they still are. But I would love to see that really just extrapolated across the whole city and our park system.
We're seeing, Garvin is an example of, we see a lot of the wear and tear on that park right now.
Right.
And I think that one of the comments that I hear from people is that we've got to learn to take care of what we've got. We kind of keep pouring budget into new things when we haven't actually taken care of the stuff that we already have.
Sure. And I think the challenge there too is, years ago, we would have, playground equipment that would be at a park. And then, something would break or, it would just get run down. And so we would invest in new equipment and put that new equipment out there. The old equipment never went away, though.
Right.
So then it was just like a hodgepodge of all this different equipment. And then you go in and you see, well, it's not taken care of. Well, it wasn't taken out originally, and it should have been. Sometimes we have to let go of a little bit of that nostalgia at times in order to transform some of our parks. But something else to keep in mind, too, then, is the length of time that it takes to get some of this equipment and to make those repairs. Unfortunately, playground equipment, I did not know this, is very hard to get a hold of at times, and finding replacement parts because it changes so frequently. So we can install something at Price Park, and 5 years later, it's no longer made, and we're trying to figure out different ways to repair or replace what we have.
Okay. Everybody is talking about public safety issues these days, and rightfully so.
Sure.
Some of in Evansville, I've always loved Evansville for its kind of, it's always had a different atmosphere to me than other places. We have been very successful in Evansville, I believe, at ignoring major problems at times. And if you look at crime statistics for our city, we're above the national average in violent crime rate. Our murder rate is over the national average. We had 24 murders in Evansville last year, 19 the year before. Those don't sound like significant numbers. They are to the people the family members and the people who are involved. But the fact is that even with that number that we deal with, when you put it into the statistical, database, it all of a sudden it becomes there's really a problem. What are we going to do to address that?
Sure. Well, and public safety has been something that I've spoken to since day one whenever I decided to run for election. And it's something that while I don't think we've ignored public safety, but I think sometimes we think what we're doing is okay or it's enough. And I think that our police department has suffered from that because, they're not getting paid enough. And I would love to be able to give them more training, more resources, more tools. They do a phenomenal job. My goodness, it was a year ago, the Walmart incident that happened.
Right.
And when we have things like that happen in our community, and to see the response and everything on the other side, we have an amazing public safety system here, and I'm going to loop in firefighters and dispatch and everyone that's working to keep Evansville safe. I think what we need to start looking at more is, why are we seeing an increase in these violent crimes? Are there other wraparound services that aren't being provided? It's not from a lack of trying on our side.
Right.
It's truly, I believe, where as a community, if we can figure out more ways to come together and meet some of the other needs, we'll see a reduction.
I know it's a hard one to tackle because it's so multifaceted. But it's that thing of the financial resources have to be in place. We have to be paying the officers enough, not only to retain them, but to attract new officers. And that's become very competitive. Cities all over the country are trying to steal cops.
Yes, they have.
They have put out a really good effort at stealing officers. So it's a competition thing too for the city, and then it loops back into all of the other life issues for Evansville. So Yeah, I can see where that's a complex one to tackle.
Well, sure, absolutely. And, you kind of spoke to that piece of talent retention. And that's something in my day-to-day life that, I work with. So currently I'm at Clifton Larson Allen, which is a large national public accounting firm. And so I'm one of them that, go and I'm trying to steal accountants away, right? We look at the value that someone could bring to the firm, and, we're essentially going after those targeted individuals. And that's happening across the board in all industries. The war for talent truly is a real thing, and anyone in the business sector or the government sector, anyone that really hires anyone, is well aware of the competition that's out there. So in order to make sure that we have an attractive, not just benefits and compensation package, but really an attractive city to make sure people want to live here and stay here, we have to have the right kind of leadership that will know and understand what we have to do moving forward.
So a part of the whole crime picture too, obviously, is drugs. And let's talk about what happened outside of a restaurant here in Evansville.
Yes. So actually, this was Monday. We were having a meet and greet that was scheduled, and just a couple of minutes before the start of it, an individual was driving the wrong way down Governor and ran into a parked car, was pulled out of the car. She had overdosed, and the owner of the establishment ran out, didn't know what was going on, and had to administer Narcan. And thankfully was able to resuscitate her. Ambulance was there, police were there, fire were there. The response time was incredible. Again, that's seeing all of our public safety officers in action, working together so seamlessly is great, but you don't want to see them,
Right.
Having to do those things. And, that really gave me pause because, just down the road, there's a school, and a little bit further down is a major intersection. And there's all of those things that, I really just started to kind of think through, what if? And that's not just, that one little area of town. That can happen anywhere. And so really, this focus on addiction services and making sure that we do have tougher sentences for individuals that are dealing fentanyl, because that's where we're seeing, a lot of these overdoses. We don't hear about the use of methamphetamines very much anymore. It used to be 10 years ago or so you would hear, a meth lab found, a meth lab, or, that's not the case anymore. It's unfortunately something that's much more dangerous. And we've got to get a handle on this before it becomes even worse. And I think that pairing with medical professionals, with mental health professionals, really investing in the addiction services, I think is going to be helpful, but also just general understanding and communication to our residents to let them know that this is a problem in our community, and we need to all be working together to make sure we're solving it.
And there are solutions that are out there in the faith-based community that help to address this. The Gathering Church, if you're familiar with them at all, that's their heart completely is reaching out to people who are fighting with addictions and trying to help them become whole again.
Right.
But how else do you see the city addressing it? You talked about stiffer penalties.
Sure.
That's something obviously that becomes a legislature issue.
Sure, with that and with the prosecutor too. So it's working hand in hand with the prosecutor's office, with our EPD, and then of course with the legislative body, and not just here locally. That's going to be a state level. But those are things that can all be done. But mental health services too. It's a year-long wait to see a psychiatrist for most individuals, and whenever you're looking at someone that is in need, Do you think they can wait a year?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot that goes into this, and we are going to be seeing an expansion of our med school and some new mental health services and programming coming out of that, which I will be a champion for, and I'm excited to help in any way that I can if elected as mayor. But truly, an education for all of our residents to know, to understand. The first thing that I did after that incident on Monday was reached out to one of our state representatives, and I asked about funding for Narcan. Is this something that is common? We talk about funding for, the food bank and food
Right.
insecurity, and those are individuals that need help and they need food. Well, now we're looking at individuals that are addicted to substance, and unfortunately, they can overdose from it, and so a substance like Narcan can then help. So is there a means to find some kind of, whether it's federal or state funding? Because, the business owner there, if that would have happened in his parking lot, there's a whole nother set of repercussions. And you really start to think about how this problem can sprawl into different sectors and having an economic impact as well on other individuals, not just the individuals that are addicts. So.
Right.
There are so many layers to this, and I think that it's going to take a large team of individuals getting together on a regular basis and going through and figuring out what we can do to help.
So I guess one of the other area that I want to touch on here is, what do you see the mayor's role in? Because education, if your schools aren't good, people don't want to relocate to your community.
Sure.
So what role does the mayor have in education?
Right. So the civics teacher inside of me says none. Right?
Right.
But really, that's not the case. Now, we do have our school board, of course, and
Right.
the superintendent of the EVSC. And the goal, or at least the goal that I would have if mayor, is to walk alongside, the superintendent and that whole school board to make sure that what we're doing as a community is supporting their efforts in educating our children. And whenever we find gaps, we can work together to try to close those. I'm never going to walk in and, make suggestions on their curriculum or, how they do their schedule or, days off, things
Right.
like that. That needs to be left to the school board and of course, the superintendent. But really, I think champion for the EVSC, for our diocese, for all of our schools here in Evansville, that will be my role in making sure that we have the resources as a community to support on the back end. We're not at the forefront of education in the mayor's office, right? We're providing other services.
Right.
And that's what I look forward to, because there are a lot of great programs that I've seen in other cities. There's a lot of great programs we're doing here, and I think we can just continue to make them more robust.
One of the throwback programs, goes back, I think, to Jonathan Weinzapfel's administration, was the School Community Council. And it was, you would have business leaders, you would have nonprofits, you'd have the school corporation involved, and you would have the city, all getting together on I think it was monthly basis. But to determine how we can best funnel resources into the school corporation. And I was a part of that council for a couple of years, and it at least seemed to me that it was very effective for kind of connecting all of the dots. Because it can be pretty scattered, because you're right. Mayor theoretically doesn't have a role there, but if the schools aren't doing their part, the mayor's job is horrible, because you can't attract a new industry in if the schools aren't first class.
Right. Well, and that's where, again, I think those partnerships are important too, and looking at some of the different nonprofits that have really stepped up. I've had the opportunity to volunteer with the Dream Center, and they're doing some wonderful work, actually, looking into literacy needs as well. And so again, it's finding out where we can support but not overstep, because whenever government starts to make that overstep, I think that's whenever we start to see a lot of red flags and questions and concerns that come from our residents.
All right, now let's talk money.
Okay.
Okay. We have considerable bond debt as a city right now.
Yes.
And again, my opinion, for whatever it's worth, is that it's because we keep buying shiny new things, right?
Okay.
New thing comes on the horizon, we want to get that for the city. But the problem is that keeps mounting up to the tune of we're somewhere in the $1 billion range. And then it puts, and then the budgeting process doesn't include, in many cases, the maintenance and the upkeep and the fact that things become obsolete and have to be replaced. And that puts us in the position then of leasing streets in order to pay for equipment that's needed, but nobody put it in a budget so that we would have that there when the day comes. Is that a function of the mayor's office overseeing budgeting, or where does that fall as far as the responsibility to make sure that we're taking care of what we've got?
Right. Well, part of the fiscal responsibility is within the mayor's office, but part is also with city council, being the fiscal body. But whenever we're looking at our budget as a whole and also the amount of bonds that we have, so we have just under $1 billion in bonds, but
Close. Close.
hey, it's under, but still 75.6% of that is for water and sewer utility. And that is for all of the mandatory upgrades that we have got to do in replacement of systems. So whenever you're looking at really only about 25% is, bonds that we've used for, like you say, the new things, the shiny things, those are
But
bonds.
that's still $200 million.
Sure. How much do you think an ice rink costs, though, or the upkeep for one?
Well, yeah.
We're looking at $15 million. I think it was right around $15 million for some upkeep with Swander over the last couple of years.
Sure.
And we have certain bonds that are specific for parks and recreation use. We cannot use them for anything else. So as much as we would like to say, well, we just shouldn't even use that, or that should be used over here, we know that quality of life measures, have to be here. We know that we are going to have to, upgrade. I think it was the cooling tower. And again, I'm not an ice rink, pro
Right.
by any means, but I believe it was the cooling tower, the cooling system within Swanders that had to be replaced. And that facility is several years old, which,
Sure.
it actually went, I believe, past its longevity. So replacing that, it's not that we don't budget to put those things in there. It's that our budgeting is surrounded around bringing out a bond, because we're never going to have $15 million laying around to then replace something that we know has a 15-year lifespan. So that's part of the process, I feel like, in city government. People hear this and they're like, oh my gosh, that's an outrageous number. You look around at other cities throughout the state, they are very, very similar in terms of what their population is and how much they spend. Now, we're a little bit different in the terms of the water and sewer. That's a whole separate line item. So whenever I'm looking at our debt, really it's, we'll call it $200 million. We're still going to have to pay for all of the water and sewer, but there's a lot of other things that go into that piece as well. And I believe there's some federal funding out there that we will be able to apply for that can help ease some of that burden as well.
All right. The average person has really no understanding of how all of that system works. From kind of the average guy standpoint, what people, I think, hear from, for example, city council meetings is this reallocation, the shuffling of funds, basically. Right. And people go, oh, they're having to move it from here over to here in order for us to survive. And it's the kind of shuffle that you and I can't do on our personal checking account. We can't make those kind of moves. We can't sell our driveway. We can't do bonds. So we hear the financial story from the city, and frankly, it just sounds like some of it is just, kind of a con isn't the right word, but it
feels
sounds
like
shady.
like a shell game almost,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I completely understand that, and this is where I would say let's break it down to a different level, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say we've got in our checking account, we have our budget, right, for our house. X amount goes to groceries and to spending money, or all of our other bills, all of these things. Mm-hmm. And so if we have call it $2,000 of needs, within a month. Probably more, but we're just going to use these numbers. 2,000, and then we're only bringing in $1,000 from our job. Okay, we've got $1,000 deficit. So how do we make $1,000? Well, we have to figure out different ways. Now, some people would go and get another job. Then they'd be working two jobs, and then they could meet those needs. Or, you could be maybe an entrepreneur and say, I've got this driveway right here, and it's really close to this event venue, and so we're going to start charging people to park here. And that excess revenue that we receive from this is what we're then going to use to make sure that there is no deficit on a monthly basis. It doesn't necessarily work like that. When you're looking at these budgets, these very large budgets for the city. But whenever you have access to other dollars, that's whenever we have to make those shifts and rearrange things. So if the state comes down and they say, hey, you know what, we actually have, excess funding, but it's only funding for Parks and Recreation. You go, great, we would love to apply for that funding. Currently, we have $12 million. We're going to get an extra $5 million. We don't put that in the general fund. We would put that directly into Parks and Recreation. And so now some of that money that we're pulling from the general fund into Parks and Rec can be reallocated to a different area. So we were able to meet a need by using other dollars. And so I understand whenever people see those line items kind of move back and forth and those dollars rearranged, it would throw up a red flag, absolutely. But understanding that it's not that we're trying to, take money away from one budget item. It's not that we're trying to, to hide anything. And I say we, like I'm currently sitting in the mayor's office. I am not, but I am very familiar with the city budget, and my background in business, I believe, really positions me differently than most individuals whenever they're stepping into this role. It's a good understanding of the structure itself and how it works, and then how we can do the best with the dollars that we have while still leveraging state and federal funding at the same time, but being transparent with all of our neighbors.
And I think that it's that lack of understanding that creates the issues in the first place. But also there are just... because it's so complex, there's no explaining it. There's there's no way that I'm ever going to understand how this entity that is a part of the city can get bonds, sell bonds, and this one can't. So this one will sell the bonds, this one will pay for something else that's really of no use to them. It's that shell game. It's hard to...
Right. It is. It's hard to visualize. And again, it's hard whenever that budget's $440 million a year, thereabouts. And so when you're looking at all of the different funding streams that we have, not just property taxes, but all of the different grants that we receive, and like I said, federal dollars, state dollars, there's so much that goes into it. But there's only certain ways that you can use a lot of that money, which can make it very complex. And that's where we just have to be advocates of our resources, making sure that we are being fiscally responsible and that we have good people in office that know and understand these systems. Not to throw my sister under the bus here, but I would say she's one that would be like saying, no way, and with that complexity. Whereas it's something that I really enjoy, and I look at it as a puzzle, and you're trying to make sure that we're putting the right pieces in the right places so that we have that picture at the end.
All right. So since we're talking about big money, let's talk campaign finance now.
Sure.
All right. You have turned in a whopper of a campaign finance report.
Yes, thank you.
What is 100 and some odd pages?
Yes.
But it is remarkable money. Your spending for this report is, what is it, around 800,000?
Thereabouts,
roughly,
yeah.
give or take.
Yeah.
But I tend to round the numbers off. Right?
Sure.
Compared to Stephanie at 250,000 and Michael at 30,000. There's wow. For mayor of little old Evansville, and I know that game has been getting more and more expensive as we've gone, and I've seen watch the numbers go up, and what the total cost is for campaigns and stuff.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of money for wanting to be mayor.
Well, I would say it's in line with what every other competitive race around the state, what the city our size or larger is doing. This is something that we knew would be very expensive because let's face it, every race is. But the challenges that I had from the get-go was name recognition. Best way to get your name out there is through media.
Yeah.
Media is the most expensive part. And most people don't realize, but in order to keep a commercial on air for 1 week, and the time slots we had was about $50,000. So the majority of that spending is just to make sure that those commercials are on air. Now, the good part of that is those go directly to, of course, the local broadcast companies that we are putting our commercials on. So some of those dollars are staying here locally. And then whenever we're looking at all of the print materials and, Natalie Rascher swag that we're giving away, we were very intentional on spending those dollars locally because we know if the dollar is spent locally, it goes directly back into our economy. I'm proud to say that I was able to do that. I believe Stephanie was able to spend a lot of her money here locally as well. Unfortunately, I don't think the Libertarian candidate spent any of that money here locally outside of his media buys. And so if we're being responsible with those dollars, those campaign dollars, and we're pushing them back here in this local economy, that's wonderful. But again, the object is to make sure people know my name, understand the vision and everything that I'm wanting to do for Evansville. And that's my service to this community is making sure they know and understand who their next mayor is. And so for me, I think it's money well spent, but also I think that it does show a large amount of support, not just here in Evansville, but from individuals that are, within this region and, within Indiana as a whole. Yeah, I think it was 126 pages is what that finance report was, and over half were just individual donors. So it comes from PACs, from large corporations, from small businesses, and all the way down to, my sweet neighbor down the road that, gave me $100. And that's what I absolutely love.
In the world of PACs and corporate donors, do those donations buy any influence?
No, and that's one thing that I always find interesting whenever people make that assumption at times, or that accusation. And I come from a world of HR. No one's buying any favors from me. My job is to make sure that I stay neutral and that I have a good understanding of what's going on, and I make my decisions independent of any kind of outside influence. It's also, being in the CPA world and public accounting world for so long, independence is very important. And that's where I appreciate those corporate dollars or PAC dollars that come in, absolutely. But it doesn't ever mean that they have an advantage or a step above someone that maybe didn't donate. It's going to be whoever's best for the job.
Do you think that they have an expectation, though, when they write that check? I
am pretty transparent, and whenever I talk to individuals, whenever I say thank you, but they know that it is not pay to play here in Evansville if I'm your mayor.
Okay, and then I'll ask you about how you got led to Bray Bender Cox. Is that the right name on that? Bray Bender Cox, in Virginia.
Sure. Oh, sure.
Yeah, because
yes.
that was a major chunk of your campaign finances that went to them
Sure.
for their services.
Sure. Well, somewhat. So we wrote all of our checks to them to then pay for that media.
Right.
So, and that's just because you have to have a certain credential to do that media buying. I don't have that credential,
Right.
so you would probably know more about that than I do.
But there are companies in Evansville,
Sure.
Media Mix, others that have been around the market for a long time, have established relationships with the media,
Right.
that are very capable of doing those buys and have the credentials, and they get the pricing and the discounts.
Right. Well, and this group was the one that was also responsible for putting together our commercials, and we felt as though that one-stop shop was just going to be very helpful for us, and we've worked with them in the past as well. So we consider it, money well spent. They did a great job, and they enjoy coming to Evansville and spending dollars here. So I think that it was a good fit for us.
Okay. All right. What else would you like anybody to know? I know we're running short on time.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, I would just, again, encourage everyone to get out and vote first.
That's number one, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, but also, I think all of us have said, it's important to do your research. It's important to get to know and understand who your public servants are. And at the end of the day, I'm, an Evansville girl, and I love our city, not just because of the things we have or what we could do in the future, but because of the people here.
Yeah.
That's always going to be number one. I'm a remote employee. My husband's a remote employee. We choose Evansville every single day. And we need a mayor that is going to choose Evansville and continue to give back and continue to be a voice for all of the residents here. And I know that's what Evansville would receive if I'm elected.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us again this week in Evansville. It's a production of City Gate, and a big thanks to Jana Douglas and the crew here at City Gate for making all of this possible. Be sure that you subscribe, like, and comment on this video so that, first of all, the subscription is important because you get a chance to be notified every time that a new episode drops. This is going to just so that everybody knows, we're dropping the mayoral candidates in rapid succession here. So it'll be boom, boom, and maybe a third boom. But Stephanie Terry, her schedule has been very, very busy, and we're having some trouble getting connected there. Hopefully we'll be able to get her before Election Day as well. But in the meantime, just thanks for joining us, and be sure to join us for the next episode.